Hi, now we are going to learn about this question. Okay, let's check the question. So, using a supply and a demand diagram, explain how the imposition of a subsidy on a good would affect surplus enjoyed by the producer of that good. Right. So, here we have to check for few things with the demand and supply diagram. We have to check what will happen in the market when a subsidy is introduced. Okay. And how it will affect the surplus, whether it will increase or decrease the surplus of the producers of that particular good. Okay. So first let's check what do you mean by a subsidy. So basically a subsidy is a payment, right, made by the government to producers to encourage the production and the consumption of a good. So subsidy is a payment made by the government to producers to encourage the production and the consumption of a good. Why they have to pay for the to the producers? So basically, when a product is introduced in the market, sometimes it will benefit the society, right? Maybe it's something needed for all the people. Okay, but due to the high production cost, the producers may not be able to reduce the price. But the consumers also are not able to buy the product much due to the price. Okay. So if the government feels like it is necessary for the society or it is good for the society, for example, maybe it's a food product or any necessary medicine, something like that. Okay. So if the government says this, like the consumption is reduced due to the price, the government will give some subsidy to the producers. Okay. The government will pay the differences to reduce the price. So the producers can sell the product at a low price, the consumers can buy it at a low price, but the producers won't have to incur any loss. That is how the subsidy is working. So let's explain it with the diagram. Okay. So as you can see here, S0 is our initial supply curve. D0 is our initial demand curve. We have initial equilibrium at E0 and the price at the initial equilibrium is P0 and the quantity at the initial equilibrium is Q0. Okay. So uh, now the curve is shifted due to the subsidy. Okay. So basically what happens when the subsidy is given? The producers can increase their production, right? They are encouraging the production, right? So the production will be increased. As a result, supply of that product in the market will also increase. So whenever the supply of a market increases at all price level, the supply curve will shift to rightward. When the supply is increased at all price level, the supply curve will shift to rightward. And the if the supply is reduced at all price level, it will be shifting to the left side. Okay, to show the reduction in supply. So here the supply curve is shifting to rightwards. Okay, so that is why the initial S0 curve was becoming S1. Okay, so the initial demand curve was D0 and supply curve was S0 and equilibrium price is P0 and quantity was Q0. After subsidy, the shift from S0 to S1. Okay, S0 to S1. So, the subsidy shift the supply curve rightward or downward. Okay, it's downward from S0 to S1. So now the new supply curve is forming a new equilibrium with the initial demand curve. That is D0, right? So the new equilibrium at E1. So we have a new equilibrium at E1. So what is the new price level? New equilibrium price is P1 and new equilibrium quantity is Q1. What is the difference between initial equilibrium price and new equilibrium price? It is less than initial equilibrium price, right? So P1 is less than P0. And what about the new equilibrium quantity? Initial equilibrium quantity is less than new equilibrium quantity, right? So Q1 is greater. Okay, so what is happening here? For the say more quantity of products, right? For buying more quantity of product, now the consumers has can pay less, right? So consumers pay a lower price, that is P1. Okay, so that is the case. So what about the price received by the producers? But producers receives a high price P2 due to the subsidy. So let's see how it is working with some numericals. Okay, so just imagine that the initial price was like let's take our P0 as 100. Okay, our P0 was 100 and let's take the quantity as 10. Okay, for 10 units, you have to pay 100 rupees. Okay, and now the government has introduced a subsidy, right? So the supply curve has shifted and the price comes down. So let's take our P1 as 80 rupees. Okay. And now they can buy more product, right? For 100 rupees, they can buy more product. So let's take it as 12 or something like that. Now they are able to buy 12 units instead of 10. But check the price that is received by the like producers. Okay, so just imagine that the government is providing 40 rupees per unit as subsidy. Okay, so what is the total amount received by the like producers? 80 plus this 40. Total they will get 120, right? So which is more than the initial equilibrium price. Okay, so the difference will be paid by the government. Okay, so this is a subsidy given by the government. Okay. So, in this case, both consumers and producers are getting benefit, right? So, producers receives P2, which is higher than P0 due to subsidy. So, vertical distance between P1 and P2, this P1 and P2, this distance, right, represent the subsidy per unit. Okay. So, this is a subsidy per unit. Got it? So, let's see the effects on producer surplus. So, here the producer's surplus. What will happen to the producer surplus? So for the initial equilibrium, what was the producer surplus? Only this much, right? This was the initial producer surplus, right? Like this. Okay. This was the initial producer surplus, right? Now the producer surplus has shifted to this side. See, this is a new producer surplus. Okay, the area A. So producer surplus is the area above the supply curve and below the price received. Okay, below the price received by producers. So in this diagram, area A represents the increase in the producer surplus, not the whole producer surplus. It is the increase, right? This much surplus has increased for the producers. So producers are now receive a higher effective price P2 instead of P0, and output increases from Q0 to Q1. So more units are sold, right? So even though the market price falls to P1, the producers benefit because of the government pays the difference. This increases their revenue and the surplus. So this is how some of the subsidies are working in our economy. Okay. So basically to make sure that everybody who needs the product are receiving the product at a lesser price, the government is paying some differences to the producers, which will be more than the initial equilibrium price, so that both the consumers and producers are getting benefited. Okay, so this is how the subsidy is working. So it is very easy to explain it with the help of a graph.